Recorded Books presents The 49ers by William W. Johnstone and J. A. Johnstone, narrated by me, George Guidall. From Job, chapter 22, verse 24. Then shalt thou lay up gold as dust, and the gold of Ophir as the stones of the brooks. From Proverbs, chapter 11, verse 28. He that trusteth in his riches shall fall, but the righteous shall flourish as a branch. Book 1. Chapter 1. The Ozark Mountains, Arkansas, 1848. Cord Bennett laid his cheek against the smooth wood of the rifle stock, peered over the barrel at his target, held his breath, and squeezed the trigger. The old flintlock boomed and kicked hard against his shoulder. Gray smoke gushed from the barrel. For a moment, Cord couldn't see what he'd just shot at. Then the smoke cleared, and he spotted the small, furry shape lying on the ground at the base of the tree. A moment earlier, the squirrel had been standing on a branch, chattering away. The critter was dead now, head clipped clean off by the ball from Cord's rifle. That left the body intact for skinning, cleaning, and plunking in the stew pot. Along with the other 3 squirrels Cord had shot earlier during his tramp through the woods, they would make a nice mess of victuals, enough to feed Cord, his pa, and his 2 brothers for a couple of meals anyway. Cord walked over to the trees to pick up the squirrel he'd just shot and add it to the bounty in the sack slung over his shoulder. He was glad it had been a productive jaunt, and he wouldn't come home empty-handed. Whistling a little tune, Cord started to walk off, but then he stopped. Even though there was nothing all that dangerous in these woods, a smart man reloaded his rifle as soon as he got a chance after using it. An empty rifle wasn't worth a blamed thing unless the threat got close enough to use it as a club. It was just a burden. Once the flintlock was ready to fire again, Cord started home. In his early 20s, he was of medium height but appeared slightly stocky because of the heavy muscles he had developed working on the farm. His back and shoulders stretched the fabric of the homespun shirt he wore. He had no hat, so the sun beat down on the thick shock of light brown hair on his head. His face was open and friendly, often smiling, an indicator of his stubborn determination to make the best of things no matter how bad they got. And here lately, they had gotten pretty bad. He emerged from the trees and came out at the top of a bare slope, overlooking the little mountain valley where the Bennett family farm was located. Smoke curled from the stone chimney at one end of the log cabin. Beyond it was the shed where the milk cow and the 2 mules were kept, and past that was the hog pen. Chickens pecked futilely at the bare ground between the cabin and the shed and pen. Maybe they thought they saw some bugs, but Cord was pretty sure they were mistaken. The fields stretched off to the left toward the head of the valley. They looked pretty pathetic. The corn was dying from the hot, dry weather. The fruit trees in a little orchard had produced what looked earlier in the summer like it might be a pretty good crop. But now the fruit was shriveling up, too. Nothing could grow worth a lick in weather like this. Even the hog pen had just about dried up, and the hogs were covered with crusted dirt instead of mud. They looked miserable. And the worst part of it was, this was the 2nd summer in a row with such prevailing conditions. The relief the area had gotten during the previous fall and winter hadn't been enough to allow things to recover. Cord shook his head and told himself not to dwell on such things. You had to take the world and do what you could with it. You sure couldn't reach up to the sky and shake the rain out of it, no matter how much you might feel like doing that. He saw no sign of his older brothers, Flint and Steve, and didn't know if they were inside the cabin or off somewhere else. Not that it mattered. Cord couldn't blame them for not working. What could they do? What could anybody do in weather like this? A moment later, his pa came out of the cabin and walked around toward the shed and hog pen. Vern Bennett was tall and rake-thin, with white hair under his shapeless old hat and a white beard. Cord saw the sun flush off something his pa was holding and realized Vern had a knife. He was going to butcher one of the hogs, Cord thought, thinning the bunch even more. Eventually the hogs would all be gone. That wasn't necessary today, not with the bounty Cord was bringing in. Cord leaned the rifle against a nearby tree and cupped his hand around his mouth to shout, "Pa, wait!" The words echoed from the hill that surrounded the valley. Vern halted and looked around toward
Sample complete. Ready to continue?